SEC and Big Ten fans have been looking forward to this one since the series was signed. We got Auburn, we got Penn State and Happy Valley, and we got whiteout conditions and a primetime national TV affair between, again, the SEC and the Big Ten. We got Michael Gittens on the line, also Caesar Walker. You can catch them on the War Report. They've joined us a couple times here, the Voice of College Football, and they know their Auburn football, so it's a great time having them here. How you guys doing tonight?
Amazing, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. You guys do a great job over there. Michael and I got together a couple different times, and I checked out the site, and I only invite people on here that know what they're talking about, and you guys do some impressive work. There's no question about that. So people know little about this Auburn edition just because of who you've played and beaten them by 1 million points the first 2 weeks. Michael, I'll start with you, and then Caesar, you can chime in just in regards to this Auburn team. And despite the opponent, is there something that you found out about this team that you had questions about before they ever took the field?
We had questions about discipline. We had kind of questions about the commitment to excellence based on the coaching change. Brian Harsin has brought in a work hard work attitude. He cleaned house a little bit, and he installed something that, some guys opted out of and other guys bought in. And for the guys who stayed and bought in, they are reaping the benefits these first 2 weeks of this system. So it was a complete overhaul on offense, right? Our quarterback is being asked to do some different things that he's never been asked to do before. And at the end of the day, what you're seeing better execution because of discipline. We are a much more disciplined football team. What struck me the first 2 weeks is guys seem to understand their assignments for the most part. It hasn't been perfect, but the result has been we beat our first two opponents really badly because they're executing the vision on offense at a high level. And then defensively, I said it in the preseason, so our viewers are no strangers to this statement. In the preseason, I told everybody this would be an all-time great Auburn defense. Our secondary is a strength of our team. We probably have the best tackling linebacker duo in the country. The question was going to be D-line. Were we going to be able to generate a pass rush? They found a way to do that through the first 2 weeks, so it's looking good going into Penn State.
What do you say there, Caesar?
Yeah, Auburn has never been void of talent. They've always have had talented recruiting classes, talent up and down the roster. Auburn was just in need of a culture change. And to what Mike G alluded to, it was discipline, toughness. And one of the things that Harsin talked about during SEC Media Days was he kind of surveyed some things. He noticed some guys not showing up to practice at all, or if they did show up, they were showing up late. He saw that guys weren't able to finish drills in the offseason. And there were some things that he knew he needed to adjust and change once he got to Auburn and actually began to work on building his program. And to what Mike G alluded to, some guys didn't want any part of that and they left. Fortunately for us, there's this thing called the transfer portal, and we were able to find guys who were looking for an opportunity, guys who were hungry for a chance to prove themselves at a very high level. And that addressed some of the needs we had at defensive line. And I think it's one of the reasons why our defensive line, although we played Alabama State and Akron, we have been able to disrupt things up front and make it really tough on offensive lines. And I think seeing these guys look like in week one, appear to look like they're in midseason form was impressive to see, because that was something that just we didn't see a lot during the previous coaching staff. Is sometimes we didn't look in midseason form until midseason. And so to see it in week one was encouraging, because Harsin has mentioned the 1-0 mentality, winning the day. And for us to go out and treat Akron and Alabama State as if they're Penn State or Georgia and Alabama is encouraging, because that lets me know that the focus is there.
It does, because we tend to disregard these type of games, but at the same time, we see examples all over the nation of teams at Auburn's level messing around with teams like that and winning 38-14, very unimpressively, kind of slopping around. And sure, they're just so talented. They still win by 3 scores, but it's not the 60-10 or 55 zip or whatever the other score was beatdown that you should hand these kind of teams if you're in Auburn. And so they definitely took care of business.
Yeah, I would say week 1 yielded a lot of what you just said. There were a lot of almost upsets in week 1 in college football where, top 15 teams came out and just looked unprepared and sloppy against lesser competition. I'm happy that Brian Harsin didn't let that happen to us. I think it's a testament, again, to his commitment to excellence. One of the things that he said when he came in that's rung true, he said, if we're going to play for championships, everything we do matters. He has treated every step of this process like that, and the players have bought into it, which is the most important part. They bought into every little thing that we do matters. And again, 1-0, right? Win the week and then get to the next week and win that week.
Florida State and Washington didn't think that they would lose to FCS teams at this point either.
Right.
All right. The two guys that everybody knows, even if you don't lock in on Auburn football, if you're a college football fan, you know about Bo Nix, you know about Tank Bigsby on offense. The Tank you know about because he's pretty much a sure thing, is one of the best in the business. Bo Nix, because he's the quarterback, and you probably have the perception that he's a little on shaky ground here, and at least entering this season. So I guess, Caesar, we'll start with you on Bo Nix and what you've seen from him. And again, because of the opponent, how much you can take from that and what you would like to see this Saturday in Happy Valley in front of, and not that he's not used to playing at hostile stadiums in the SEC, of course, but what you would like to see out of him Saturday.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'll take it piece by piece. There was a myriad of issues that affected Bo Nix's play. Let's be clear on that. And I mentioned previously about a culture shift. One of the things that has impressed me through these first 2 games is we have a coaching staff that has assessed its roster. They have an understanding of what the players can and cannot do, and have put together a scheme and a game plan that suits these players' strengths. And one of the things that I think has hurt Bo through the first 2 seasons is while he was underdeveloped in some areas, the coaching staff asked him to do some things that he probably wasn't ready to do. And so with Brian Harsin and Mike Bobo coming into Auburn, they're asking him to only do certain things. They want him to get the ball out of his hands quickly. They don't want him to run around and play hero ball. Take what the defense gives you. Read the defense. Make calls at the simple things. They're not asking him to put the team on his shoulders. Utilize Tank. If your first read isn't there, check down to a guy coming out the backfield. Check down to a tight end. They're making the game easier for him. And so for him to play in that system, he's looked better. He's actually making better decisions instead of focusing on his primary read and causing his offensive line to not be able to block for him, which causes him to rush out to the right. And once he does that, it's anything can happen in terms of his decision making. That hasn't happened a lot, albeit against Akron and Alabama State, but it's encouraging to see him begin to play within the scheme and trust the coaches and what they're asking him to do. And I think that's what Bobo and Harsin are going to ask him to do this upcoming week. Play within the system. Trust your O-line, trust Tank, trust Jarquez Hunter, another running back that's been making a big splash, and allow that to create opportunities for you. Don't hold on to the ball. Get the ball out of your hands. Give him some easy throws and allow him to get into a rhythm and get comfortable. That's basically what happened against Akron. He made a few easy throws, and then he was off to the races from there.
Anything else on Bo, Mike? Yeah, listen, this is going to be the battle of who manages their quarterback the best. Caesar encapsulated everything beautifully. They've got to keep Bo inside of himself. No hero ball. Bo on the road has traditionally not been a good thing for Auburn. So he's got to step his play up on the road. The system has to help him, right? The system has helped him tremendously through 2 games. I think that we spoke with Bradley Larondo, Auburn's kind of football chief of staff and personnel, and he told us, he said, listen, man, we're trying to get him to focus on his fundamentals, stay within the system, if he can just do the simple things, he can be a really good quarterback. He's played hero ball his whole life. Now you're on a team with a bunch of really good athletes. Trust them. Yeah. Trust the system. Our offensive line has had trouble in pass protection, but primarily because the last system prioritize slow developing play action plays that require them to block for like 4 seconds on average. If you're a college football fan and you don't understand that 4 seconds is a lifetime to blocking in college, right? The better quarterbacks in our league over the last few years have had the ball out of their hands in under 2.5 seconds on average, right? And what do we see this year? We see Bo, when kept clean, is releasing the ball in about 2.4 seconds on average. So he's getting the ball out of his hands. He's identifying his primary read, checking down to his secondary read quickly enough to get the ball out to help neutralize pass rush. He just needs to do that. I feel like we're going to lean pretty heavy into the run game. And when Bo has a chance to keep the defense honest, because make no mistake, Penn State they're going to stop the run, and they're going to try to force Bo to beat them with his arm. And when he gets those opportunities, he's got to make the throw. He's got to throw catchable balls to our receivers. I expect him to do that because I expect that the coaches are going to manage him like he has not been managed in the past.
So correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Obviously, Gus Malzahn had the two big seasons, of course, right out of the gate, BCS championship game, and then later on the great month against Georgia and Alabama, they get to an SEC championship game. But otherwise than that, they're losing 4 or 5 games a year. I think that would surprise a lot of people that didn't track the year-by-year record, that they're going 7-5, 8-4 all the other seasons. And it seemed like while the defensive line was typically lights out, one of the best in the nation, the offensive line was maybe ignored in recruiting, just wasn't up to the standard that you would expect it at Auburn. Do you guys feel better about this line? You guys gave me some indication there about the offensive line play, but is that still the sore spot?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that, again, I think the last system was really tough on our offensive line. I think what they were being asked to do was ridiculous. In this new, I think that our new coaches understand what the strengths and weaknesses of this offensive line are. Their strength is run blocking. Their weakness is pass pro. So if you're going to lean heavy into the pass, you need to prioritize quick reads, and you got to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, and you got to help this offensive line out. They had moments where they blocked great last year in pockets, but again, a bad scheme with just not very imaginative runs, pass schemes, right, and route trees left not a lot of options for the quarterback when a play broke down. So right. What we've got this year is we've got the reemergence of the tight end and the check down. And I know that those sound like basic concepts to most college football fans, but they have been missing at Auburn for the last few years, and they're back. So the schedule set up nice for them to kind of test this in the first 2 weeks, right? Without being in any danger of losing the game. Now it's back. I have supreme confidence in this coaching staff. I really do. I will tell you that, we talk a lot about players, but we don't lend enough blame to coaches for why players don't pan out. And they have focused on development in this offseason. In terms of offensive line, last thing I'll say is that Jeff Pittman, our new strength and conditioning coach, they brought in a completely different strength and conditioning program. Because the scheme prioritizes some different things. Gus needed his guys to be kind of light and nimble. And Pittman came into the offseason and just turned those guys back into some monsters. So I think they're stronger and they're more physically ready for the game this year. They didn't have an offseason last year. And I know that hurt, right? But this year they had a full spring. They had a summer. I expect they don't need to beat the world either, right? Like, Auburn's going to have to win it on all three fronts, man. They're going to have to win it, physically, mentally, and then from the coaching booth, we have to out-scheme Penn State.
Yeah.
Gus Malzahn is known for, being an offensive guru. And I might be wrong on this, but maybe at times those kind of guys, Jimbo Fisher would be another one, that are just notoriously hard on their quarterbacks, that maybe they're expecting these guys just to know as much as they know, and to be able to dissect a defense like they can on a chalkboard, but to be able to do it with SEC defensive ends chasing them. So that might be a little bit too much to ask. Yeah,
listen, Gus has got his dream quarterback right now at UCF and Dylan Gabriel. The test of his system will be after Gabriel is gone. Can he find the next one? He had one real good pure pocket passer in Jarrett Stidham. And again, even in Stidham's best year in 2017, he took 36 sacks in that offense because the lines have never really been good, right? The system only works when you have a dynamic athlete at quarterback that can escape pressure and make something happen on his own. And then he's had decent running backs over the years. What you're seeing right now is that Harsin has both, but he's not asking Bo to save the game like Gus did, right? We've got two really good running backs. And the surprise of Auburn's season, Mark, I called this. So if you're listening to the voice of college football right now, you don't listen to the War Report. Jarquez Hunter is going to be the surprise of this college football season. This kid is something special. He was a 3-star recruit. He was completely overlooked in recruiting because of COVID restrictions. He squats like 600 pounds or something crazy. And in the first game, he is Auburn's leading rusher through 2 games. So a lot has been made of Tank. But Jarquez Hunter has come in and run over, around, and through competition. In game 2, Sean Shiver sat out, our number 2 back, for undisclosed reasons. Jarquez got a chance to get in there in the first quarter, and he led the game in rushing again. This kid is something special. I think Penn State's going to have a really hard time when they see Tank come out of the game and this kid come in and the game plan doesn't change. There's no reprieve. This is Bo's dream backfield, right? He doesn't have to carry it with his legs. And that's what we've seen through the first 2 games. He has not had to run very much because he could just hand it off to 2 home run threats every play, right? So it's going to be something special to watch. The run game is going to be really important on the road in terms of controlling the ball and controlling time of possession and quieting the crowd, right? 5 yards a carry will quiet a hostile environment quickly.
Absolutely.
We enjoyed the Auburn football talk. We got the War Report here with Michael Gittens and Caesar Walker. I've certainly checked out enough of their work since we've had them on a few times in the past. So head on over there, lock it in. If you're an Auburn fan, that goes without saying. You should be over there anyway. If you're just a college football fan, SEC, and you want to keep track of the top 15 programs in the country, then get on over there to the War Report. One of these kind of an storyline off the field that makes this intriguing for me is the SEC is the best conference on the field. The Big Ten, I think, I don't think it's arguable. It's the second best conference in college football. But when it comes to money, TV ratings, attendance, these two own the sport. And so anytime they get together, it's fun because they don't play a whole lot of non-conference games against each other. It's usually in the postseason, bowl games, playoff games that these two see each other. So we got a home and home series. Auburn going up north to take on Penn State. Penn State returns the trip, I'm guessing, next year.
Correct.
Yes, they do.
Gotcha. A couple bowl games from these two. 2002 Outback Bowl.
2003.
Capital
One Bowl.
2003. Auburn won that game in a slugfest, like 13-9, something like that.
Yeah.
Penn State beat them about 9 years earlier in the rain in the Outback Bowl. So they've played a couple times in postseason play here in the last 30 years. Good stuff. Defense. Let's talk up the defense. Caesar, how good is the Auburn defense compared to what we've seen the last 5 to 10 years?
Well, Auburn's defense has been relatively good, but they took a kind of they took a step back, and you tend to take a step back when you lose your Derek Browns and Marlon Davidsons of the world, 2 guys who really made the D-line very formidable. I think taking a step back, and we saw during a year of COVID, it was difficult to kind of solidify that position. And I particularly remember a home game against Tennessee where Tennessee was able to run the ball and kind of push our D-line around. And as talented as our linebacking core and secondary was, it was kind of difficult for us to really assert ourselves defensively because the opposing team's offensive line was kind of controlling the situation up front. This year, it appears as though we've addressed that. And we had a guy to kind of enter the portal right before fall camp in Truesdale. But what we begin to realize is he left because there were some new faces there who were really causing some noise. And once we got into fall camp and the scrimmages were taking place, we were hearing that the O-line was having its fair share of battles and struggles against the D-line, which has been encouraging to see. Big Tony Fair, transfer out of UAB, is a big guy who can plug the middle. And in Derek Mason's 3-4 defense, you need a guy who can do that because you want your guys, your Owen Papos and the Zacoby McClains around the world. You want them to fly around to the ball and make plays. And that's exactly what they've been doing through the first 2 weeks of this season. If there's a tackle to be made, they're making it because you got Tony Fair, you have Marcus Harris up front, another transfer from Kansas who I feel has been one of the biggest steals in the transfer portal. He's been very disruptive. Of course, you got Colby Wooden on the other side of Fair, also wreaking havoc. Our D-line, to me, has been a very I've been pleased what I've been seeing from them because everything else, to what Mike G alluded to earlier, is set. Our linebacking core is good. The defense, I mean, we've actually added more talent in the secondary, so we've had plenty of guys in the secondary. But as long as we're able to control the situation up front with the D-line, our defense has been playing lights out. We've only allowed 27 rush yards through this, I believe, through the first 2 games. So we've really been causing havoc up front. And I feel confident going into Penn State, a team that has questions with its offensive line, that our defensive line can force the issue and make life really, really tough for Sean Clifford.
Yeah, I'll add to that by just saying I'm going to piss off a lot of Penn State fans. Versus Wisconsin, Mark, they rushed the ball 18 times for 50 yards.
I watched every play of that game.
Yeah, let me tell you, if they are going to do that again versus Auburn, Penn State might not score a point in this game. If they're going to be that one-dimensional, they're going to have a really hard time scoring. So I expect them, and I think they know that too. Right. If you can't run the ball, Auburn's going to tee off and come after Clifford. Now we're big into advanced statistics. Right. Penn State so far through this season has kept Sean Clifford clean on 70.8% of his dropbacks. Right. So he is under pressure just under 30% of the time. Right. Otherwise, now when again, while kept clean at that 70%, he's completing about 69% of his passes. While under pressure, he's at like 38, which is really, really bad. Now, for reference, most quarterbacks have a stark drop off of 20 to 24 percentage points while under pressure versus not being under pressure. The question is just, what are you falling off of? Right. The better quarterbacks over the last few years, like Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, they're falling off like 80% when kept clean. Right. So if you give them time, they're killing you. He's fallen off 69 to 38, that signals to defenses go after him. I expect Auburn to do that. I think that we have the athletes to do that as well. So they're going to throw they're going to blitz, and they're going to make similar to how I think they're going to play Bo Nix. We're going to play him because if the game is on his arm, I plays right into what Auburn wants to do defensively. So, I don't know whether to think that Wisconsin's rush defense was just so great that it held them. But I wouldn't say there was a huge commitment to the run. They abandoned it. Yeah. Right. 18 rushes signals to me that they abandoned the run. If they're going to abandon the run that quickly in this game, it might get ugly. Everybody has got this game as a tight battle. I see more reasons that Auburn actually blows Penn State out at home than I do that Penn State actually wins this game in any fashion. Right. So Wisconsin fumbled the game away, man. They gave it away. Right. Their quarterback played awful. They had plenty of chances. Again, 58 rushes they had. They ran 95 plays to score 10 points. So they got the ball up and down the field, and then mistakes kept them out of the end zone. Under Brian Harsin, I don't think you can count on that to win a game. They're going to have to play better. So if that was kind of pinned as like a defensive slugfest, it wasn't, right? The defenses looked good because the offenses played poorly. That's what it is. If you're expecting us to play that poorly on offense, I don't think that's a good strategy. They're going to have to step it up against this Auburn defense.
Yeah, I think that that's reasonable because, for one thing, there are turnovers and there are turnovers. So if you got turnovers forced by the defense because of exceptional defensive play, the D end whips the tackle, strip sack,
Right.
Corners, safeties reading a formation and reading a quarterback and jumping a route, corners that are exceptional. And then there's just, Wisconsin just dropped the ball. Just that's not the defense making a play. Sure, they jumped on it, but they just had a miscommunication between center and quarterback. That was one fumble down around the 8 or 10 yard line that probably would have been a touchdown, at least a field goal. Yeah, they had those kind of mistakes that really bailed out Penn State. Penn State held on, it sounds like, Michael, you watched the game. Penn State held on in the first half. They could have been, down 14-17, nothing like that. They were hanging on by a string. They kept making stops in the red zone, and their offense was doing 0, like 50 yards total offense in the first half. Then they had a busted coverage in the second half, and they hit a big home run ball to, I believe, Parker Washington. So Penn State's a really good football team, but what you're telling us about Sean Clifford is not an aberration. That's the way he's operated now, going on for 3 seasons. Not just that he hasn't operated well under pressure, but his splits versus good teams are not good.
Yeah, and Mark, we know that because it's a mirror of how Bo Nix has played. They're the same quarterback over the last 2 seasons. And the question is, has our quarterback taken the next step? Right now, we have more reason to believe our quarterback has taken the next step because he's got a new system. He's got new coaches, right? Yeah, they came in knowing what to fix. Now, Sean Clifford has a new offensive coordinator, but there's a lot that's the same around Penn State. So I haven't been impressed with him through the first 2 games. I don't think any Penn State fan or anybody who analyzes that team can honestly say they're impressed with what they've seen, and it's just been because the competition has been so tough, right? Like I don't think you can say that.
Well, they may be, but here's what I would say: Sean Clifford looked better against Ball State. Obviously, he should. But the reason why he looked better is because they were able to run the football, and they took a lot of pressure off of him throwing, and ran for over 200 yards or something against Ball State, and them being able to do that took pressure off of him and allowed him to kind of play within what Mike Yurcich was asking him to do. The quarterback whose running backs have the more successful night will probably have a better time because the defense is so focused on the running game that it presents opportunities for you to make passes and make passes downfield. If Penn State can't get their running game going, and as Mike alluded to, they have struggled at times trying to run the ball this year. And so if they can't do that against Auburn, then Sean Clifford's going to have a hard time really asserting himself in this game, even if it is at home. And that's going to be a long night for him.
Yeah. Bottom line is, if they're one-dimensional, it's going to be a really rough night offensively.
Yeah. Well, my 10-second take on Penn State is that they're pretty exceptional defensively. Of course, Wisconsin's not going to blow the top off of any defense. They just don't have that kind of personnel. But they've got an NFL offensive line, and they brought in the Clemson running back. So, Wisconsin's the same thing that they bring every year with a play action quarterback who's not yet lived up to his 5-star potential. He missed a ton of throws in that game too. So to Michael, your point, it wasn't all defense. It was a lot of missed opportunities by quarterbacks being scattershot and offensive lines that were being overwhelmed much of the time. So I think that was 2 really, really good defenses, maybe just a notch below the most talented ones in the country, top 5 to 10 defenses playing spotty offenses. I don't want to say awful offenses. I think Penn State brings really good running backs. The offensive line's average, the quarterback's average. They've got 1 exceptional receiver and 1 really good complementary receiver, and they always have a tight end who's good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, they look like Auburn in most years. What gives me a lot of optimism with Auburn is, you alluded to Gus. Gus was the type of person where if his game plan worked, it worked. If it didn't, my goodness, that was 60 minutes of misery for Auburn fans because he was so committed to it. I think with this current coaching staff we have a coach who's preaching adjustments and talking about the importance of being able to take what the defense gives you. People talked about upon Harsin being hired that he runs a multiple offense. And what I really think that gives us is flexibility. And for us to be able to pivot when the opposing defense takes away what we initially want to do, there are other things in our wheelhouse and in our tool belt that we can reach to actually attack. And so what gives me hope is that Penn State's going to try to take away some things, but I'm confident that Harsin and Bobo can see that and make the appropriate adjustments to put our players in a position to be successful this upcoming Saturday.
Michael, I know you're looking for a big win, and that's quite possible, but it also could be a squeaker, and you should feel good about having a kicker that's hit 23 of his last 25, because that may come down to that.
Yeah, Carlson is a weapon, right? He's a legacy. His brother was a really good kicker for Auburn, who's in the NFL now. So, this is the kind of game that you'll take a win any way you get it. If it is a squeaker, I expect it to be a low scoring one. Definitely, because there are some opportunities for Auburn to maybe stall out on offense, right? Depending on what Penn State is able to accomplish. The game plan is simple. Just stop the run, right? If you're going to let Tank and Jarquez Hunter run all over the field, it's going to be a tough day. But if they can slow our run game down and put the game on Bo, it's just going to come down to whether he can complete throws or not.
Yeah.
That's it. Right. So if it comes down to that, then, we'll see. But having a Carlson in there that can go in and make a 45-yarder, close to 50-yarder is definitely a weapon that you'd like to have in a game like this.
Yeah, because college kickers, they have a dependable one's a bonus.
Absolutely, especially in close games.
Absolutely. Good stuff here from the group here at the War Report. You guys head on over to the War Report right here on YouTube. They do exceptional work. This is just a slice of it right here. Auburn, Penn State, we're looking forward to it, and appreciate you guys stopping by.
Thanks for having us,
Mark.
man.